All right. Hello, I'm Leigh Harrington. I am here with Jacob Towery, and I'm super excited. And we've already been laughing because I'm feeling a little nervous. Hi, Jacob. Welcome.
Hi.
I had the pleasure of Jacob. Have known each other since our residency back at Stanford in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I guess. And
Yeah.
yeah, I had the pleasure of getting to. It was so generous. Jacob is a child and adolescent and adult psychiatrist who practices in Palo Alto and an expert in team CBT as well as other areas. And he offers a pro bono intensive to clients 1 or 2 times a year. And he offers for students and colleagues to be a respectful part of those. And I recently got to join Jacob for one of his pro bono intensives, which was super cool. Jacob, thank you for doing that. I admire you in so many ways for that. Um, and it was a
You're
great,
welcome. It was great having you there.
yeah, it was a great opportunity. And I was so excited um, by some of the ways that you practice that aren't some of the ways that I practice. And you introduced me to some new ideas that I was really excited about. And I was so excited about those. I asked Jacob if we could, chat about that and record that and share that, with the world, because I love the way you're thinking about these things, Jacob. And so I'm really excited to talk with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Um, and I guess I got introduced to this idea a little bit this summer. This is a little bit of a self-disclosure, but this summer, Jacob and I were chatting very briefly. I had um, heard about your podcast in which you were talking about consent in terms of asking someone, may I kiss you, or would you like a kiss? Would you enjoy a kiss? And I remember I had the idea, oh, maybe would it be more flirtatious this way? And I think Jacob and I both like doing kind of flirting training and stuff. So I was like, Jacob, what about this? Would this be more fun? And I was kind of in this fun spirit. And I don't know if you remember, Jacob, you were like, no, I don't really like that. You were like, yeah, I don't know if that's like as respectful, or that's like kind of making an assumption. Um, and I think a little bit you were saying it wasn't quite as respectful to the woman. And as a woman who feels like I'm for being respectful of women, I walked away from our conversation like, Jacob has got something going on there that I have to think on more. And then it was a
I do
great.
recall
Do you
that was a
recall?
fun interaction.
Pardon?
I think so. I think that might have been at my birthday weekend,
Yes, it
but
was.
maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then I felt like at your intensive and with the recommendations, like book recommendations you gave to us, I felt like I got a much better understanding. Um, so that was really cool. But I was wondering if you could tell us, um, we're going to talk about this idea of consent in relationships, and I was wondering if you
Yeah.
could tell us how you um, came upon this, and anything else you would want people to know about you before we jump into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I was with my son's mother for 10 years, and we were married and together. And then we got divorced in 2012, and I was single for the first time in 10 years and really did not know what I was doing when it came to dating and all the stuff around dating. And so I started diving into dating, but also trying to um, be more aware than I was before. And I love learning, and I'm a total nerd when it comes to learning. So I started hearing about consent, which was something that wasn't really talked much about, at least for me, prior to like 2002. Um, And I just thought, oh my gosh, there's so much I like didn't know about consent, and I thought it was a really interesting area. And yeah, I started getting excited about it. So I started learning about consent and teaching about consent, and now it's something I'm pretty passionate about.
Yeah, I love your passion for it and commitment and level of understanding. Um, I feel like you've improved over the course of the week that I spent with you. I feel like you deepened my understanding immensely.
Thank you. I should also disclose, so that I don't in any way come off as like perfect or like knowing it all. A lot of my knowledge of consent comes from screwing it up. So I've had plenty of times as a man where I've screwed this up and I've been non-consensual in my life, and I feel bad about a lot of those incidents, and I've tried to at least learn from them and not keep making the same mistakes over and over. So if I in any way come off as like this Mr. Liberal expert who knows everything, at least half or more of my knowledge is gained from just screwing things up and getting egg on my face and trying to at least not keep doing the same things over and over.
Mm. I really appreciate you saying that. I feel like just dropped into more kind of care and respect for you as you're sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm I would love to hear the when you say that you started learning more and more about consent. I'd love to hear um you know more about that journey, and I'm thinking that could be stories, examples, but I'd love to hear kind of the framework. um when the other therapist and I were, observing with you, you were sharing with us kind of the history of consent and the evolution of consent in the US anyway, over the last, say, 50 years. And I'd love to hear
Yeah.
you give an overview of that. I think that was, it's very simple, but was also like kind of mind blowing for me to hear that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And my disclaimer is I don't in any way consider myself like an expert on the history of consent. So this is just my amateurish understanding of the history of consent based on books I've read on consent. But I could be saying some things that are totally wrong. But I'll take my best crack at it. So my
Awesome.
understanding is that yeah. So
Thank
my
you.
understanding is that well, for a long time, consent just wasn't even something that was talked about, period. There were many states where, like, a man could kind of rape his wife, and that wasn't even a crime. And so even the idea that like consent is important in sexual situations is relatively new. And then I think around the 1970s, if not the 80s, there was this idea that no means no. So if someone is saying like no, you can't have sex with me, then the other person should stop, which seems like kind of a no-brainer. Uh, and is good in that yes, if someone says no, you should absolutely stop. But the problem is a lot of times people don't say anything. So then
So
I think
true.
around probably the 1990s, uh, the new model was affirmative consent, which is yes means yes. And what I like about yes means yes is if you don't have a yes, then you shouldn't go forward. So silence, yes means yes is also the same as saying silence is not consent. So if someone is silent, you should not assume that by default you can move forward sexually with that person. So that was an improvement. Yes means yes. And then I think what we're moving towards in a number of communities. I'm very fortunate to live in the Bay Area of California, which is probably one of the most sex positive, progressive areas in the world in this domain, is this idea of enthusiastic verbal consent. So this is my favorite model of consent for sex with people that you're relatively new with. It also works great for things like hugging people that are relatively new to you, and many other situations. But it's particularly good if you're in a sexual situation with someone who's new. Enthusiastic verbal consent means a few different things. One, it means unless you have enthusiastic consent, you have a no. So if I say to someone, would you enjoy kissing on the lips right now? And they say, yeah, that's a no. If they say maybe, that's a no. If they say no, that's a no. If they're like, yeah, I want that, let's do that, that's a yes. So if you get a hell yes, if you get an enthusiastic yes, that's a yes. Anything less than that is a no. So that's the enthusiastic part. And what I like about enthusiastic verbal consent is it emphasizes being verbal, using your words, not trying to read people's minds. I think that there's a huge, huge, huge problem in the world with men. I'm going to be stereotypical, and for purposes of today, I'll probably often talk as if like it's a man being sexual with a woman, but all of these same principles apply to men with men and women with women and people who are gender non-binary and gender fluid, and people could be any sexual orientation, any gender. So I'll sometimes, because I think there have been so many historical instances of men being non-consensual with women, you're going to hear me talk sometimes as if it's a man being with a woman, but the same principles apply regardless of your gender or sexual orientation.
Thank you.
So I think there have been many cases, you're welcome. So I think there have been many cases of men thinking that a woman wants to do a particular thing, and then them just moving forward as if the woman is a yes. And that involves mind reading, and I think it's a huge problem because there are, I mean, probably millions, if not more, cases of women actually not being a hell yes in certain situations, but then things happening sexually. And then people can feel violated, and people can be violated, and it's a huge problem. But if you ask someone, would you like to have sex right now? And they're like, yeah, then it's great. Because assuming they're sober and there's no major power differential, then you're great. Then you know that the person wants to do the thing you're wanting to do, and then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to wonder if they're really a yes. Whereas if you just try to read body language, you're going to get it wrong sometimes, and the stakes are high.
Yes. Thank you for the overview. I think putting that in perspective, at least for me, made a lot of sense. It feels like the way that you put that together simplifies it and kind of clarifies it. And, being a person who grew up and, was dating during the 70s and 80s, and being a person who was socialized as a woman, I feel like I was socialized in the, no means no. Like, it's my job to say no. And if I haven't said no, then that means I've said yes. And I love the idea of,
Right.
I love the idea of actually the default. I think you said at one point, like the default in no means no is yes. And I love,
exactly.
I love moving towards like the default is no, unless there's an enthusiastic
Right.
verbal yes. Like, that's great. There's like a
Totally.
as a woman, I think like just the idea of that, I feel like, oh, I can relax a little bit. I don't have to be like, oh, when do I need my no? I don't need to be kind of,
Right.
which
Yeah,
I
I think no means no leads to a lot of victim blaming, and it also ignores the fact that a lot of people have a fight or flight or freeze reaction, and if people freeze and they don't know what to do and they're quiet, that should not be taken as consent.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah. Yeah. And you were talking about the difference, the maybe more subtle. I think there's like kind of this huge jump between no means no, where like it's assumed yes and you have to say no. And then to like the yes means yes, but I can imagine it's yes just because of how someone's acting. Or, in this case, if we're talking man and a woman, like the man is like, well, I can read her body language and she's saying yes to me because she's doing X, Y, or Z. And
Yeah.
Yeah. The difference, I think, between that and the enthusiastic verbal consent is more subtle, but I think really important.
Yeah.
And I think
I
that,
have myself definitely made that mistake, and I regret that, and I think that it's an easy mistake to make, that we know what the person wants and what the person, where they want to go and what they want to do, and then we're wrong. And I think it's way better to just use our words and just ask at each step.
yeah. Well, I know that we are planning on doing this in a couple parts, so we're going to wrap up soon. I have
Yes.
heard when I've I got so excited after talking with you about this. I talked with a couple of men about it, and I talked with a man who said something, like, well, I just write what you're saying, like, well, I can tell, if she wants to move forward or not. And yeah, I guess what would you have anything more to say to someone who kind of has that,
Yeah.
who's like a well-meaning, I talked to someone who's a caring, I think well-meaning man, who I wouldn't
Yeah.
normally think of being like disrespectful or inconsiderate. But what maybe more might you say to men who are in that kind of situation?
I think a lot of men, and I'll put versions of me in this category, overestimate their accuracy at predicting what women want. And I think that if we get it wrong, particularly with someone who's somewhat new to us, they could feel really violated and have like years of therapy as a result, and feeling hurt and angry and betrayed and scared. And it's not a casual consequence. Whereas it's way safer to just ask. And I can tell you, when I was dating and I was single, it was so nice to just get that enthusiastic yes. And then I had zero fears that there were going to be any problems down the road. I didn't have to wonder, is this person going to accuse me of doing something that they didn't want? Am I going to feel bad or guilty about it? As soon as I asked, like, hey, do you want to go down on me? And they were like, yeah. It's like, great. Okay, cool. There's no problem here. Everyone's doing what they want to be doing, and it's good. So I think if you're a man and you decide to just wing it and think you can read their minds, you're taking a big gamble for yourself and for your partner. So I don't recommend that approach. I think that asking is way better. You really open yourself up as a man if you do that to the person coming back later and being like, I didn't want to do that thing.
Mm.
And if your defense is, well, I looked at your body language and I thought you did, I think it's a crappy defense. And I don't recommend it. I think it's better just to ask, and then you can know with certainty.
Yeah. I just love hearing you talk about this, Jacob. I know we're out of time for this this piece, but I can't wait. I have several other questions to ask you. Like, for example, can this be fun? So I look forward to talking with you about that piece, and
Yes.
and some more aspects the next time we talk.
That sounds great. Okay,
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you soon.
Thank you so much for your time, Jacob. Have a
You're
wonderful
welcome.
day.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.